Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are plunging into one of those timeless human questions that feels particularly relevant right now. What does it truly mean to work smarter, not harder?
It's a concept that gets thrown around constantly, right? Efficiency, optimization. It sounds appealing, but you've shared some incredibly thoughtful source material with us, really digging into the why behind our feelings about effort, outcome, and the tension we experience when someone seems to get the same result you struggled for, but with seemingly minimal effort.
Exactly. We're here to take your source material, your reflections, your research, and explore the layers of this idea. Why does it bother us when someone takes a shortcut? How do modern tools like AI fit into this picture, for better or worse? And perhaps most importantly, how do you figure out what the right work is for you based on these different perspectives?
So our mission in this deep dive is to unpack that very tension you felt. We'll use the framework provided in your notes. Look at the credibility we assign to effort, the emotional story we tell ourselves about struggle, the objective reality of the outcome, and how all of this plays out in the modern world, especially with new technologies. It's about understanding not just the how of working, but the meaning we attach to it.
Okay, let's unpack this core conflict. We've all heard variations of the 10,000-hour rule, right? The idea that significant expertise comes from years of dedicated practice. It gives us a tangible measure, a benchmark for mastery, a kind of clear path.
It provides that sense of scale for achievement, doesn't it? It's a well-worn path we understand. But here's where the discomfort you describe in your source material kicks in. What happens when someone achieves a similar result or arrives at the same crucial insight, having spent only a fraction of that time? Say, someone who seems to figure it out in like 10 minutes.
That feeling, that prickle of, is it resentment, disbelief? Why does that happen? It often feels illogical, doesn't it? Because if the outcome is the same, shouldn't we just, celebrate the efficiency?
And this is where the framework you share becomes so powerful. Your source material suggests we can understand this tension by looking at it through the lenses of ethos, pathos, and logos. It's not just about the result, it's about how we perceive the journey.
Okay, so let's start with ethos. In this context, it's about the credibility someone earns through hard work, through the sheer visible effort.
Exactly. Think about what those hours really communicate. It's not just skill, it's a signal. Discipline, sacrifice, bulletproof consistency. That's your reputation currency right there. It's the sense that someone has earned the right to be listened to have authority because they've put in the reps.
Like the examples you highlighted, we admire the marathoner training daily for years. The pianist whose fingers fly because of scales practiced into the night, the carpenter whose hands are rough from decades of labor.
Their repetition builds reputation. That sheer time invested speaks volumes. In many fields, especially those requiring deep skill and nuance, credibility isn't just what you know, it's what you've endured and invested to get there. It implies you've, paid your dues.
But here's where it gets really interesting, and your source captures this perfectly. This kind of credibility, this ethos built on the grind. It feels fragile when someone bypasses it. How does it feel when others get similar results without that same visible struggle?
It can feel like someone is skipping the line.
Yeah.
Not necessarily that their result is invalid, but that their lack of visible struggle makes them seem untested, maybe even undeserving of the same platform or respect given to those who took the long road. The credibility earned through endurance feels bypassed, and that's unsettling.
So that's the ethos side, credibility built on the grind. But our relationship with effort is deeply emotional too, isn't it? This takes us right into pathos, the story, the romance of the struggle.
Pathos is the power of narrative. We don't just respect effort, we romanticize it. Think about the hero's journey, the comeback story, the training montage in pretty much every inspiring movie ever made. These evoke deep emotion in us because we connect with someone who faced obstacles, maybe failed, kept going anyway, and eventually succeeded.
Right. Their work becomes more than just a skill acquisition. It becomes a metaphor for resilience, for transformation. We love the story of the climb.
And so when someone arrives at the same destination having only done it for 10 minutes, as your source puts it, it disrupts that emotional script. There's no visible catharsis, no journey, no scars that we can see and relate to, just arrival. This is precisely why it can feel like hacking the system. It bypasses the narrative arc we expect, the one that provides that satisfying emotional release.
Okay, then there's logos, the objective truth, the outcome itself, the product. From a purely logical standpoint, if both the person who spent 10,000 hours and the person who spent 10 minutes arrive at the exact same correct insight, or produce an identical high-quality result, shouldn't the idea or the product itself just have equal weight?
In theory, absolutely. Logos is about the truth of the thing itself, the objective validity of the result. But in practice, as your source notes, we are rarely purely objective creatures. Logos doesn't exist in a vacuum. We evaluate outcomes through the filter of their origin stories.
This is key and feels so true to human nature. An insight from the recognized master is seen as earned, therefore reliable, built on a solid foundation. From the perceived novice, even if they are correct in that moment, it's often seen as luck, maybe a fluke.
Exactly. You ask yourself, can they repeat it? Can they defend it under pressure? Or was it just a fortunate stumble upon the right answer? The perceived lack of process of the paying dues can undermine the perceived truth and reliability of the outcome, even if the outcome is objectively correct.
So why does this shortcut, this efficiency from someone else, trigger such a deep reaction? It goes beyond just simple envy. Your source suggests it's about fundamental feelings of fairness, about our own identity, and even our worldview.
For those who have invested years, those who have paid the 10,000-hour price, their labor isn't just a means to an end. It can become a core principle, a part of their identity that defines how they understand value, achievement, and even deservingness.
And when someone appears to bypass that principle, it can feel like an injustice to that deeply held value. Not necessarily because the newcomer is wrong, but because they haven't earned their place, their authority, in the way the established players believe is right.
Right. There's also a degree of existential discomfort, as you pointed out in your material. If someone can leap ahead so quickly, so efficiently, what does that say about all the time we spend on the traditional path? Was it wasted? Or perhaps more unsettlingly, was the struggle optional all along?
That final thought from your source really makes you pause. Maybe the hours don't just build skill, they build meaning.
Yes. The 10,000 hours, the years of grind, they become part of how we make sense of the end result, part of the narrative that validates the achievement. We don't always admire someone simply because they're right or successful. We often admire how they got there. Their journey provides a story we can relate to, and in some cases, a mirror for our own struggles and aspirations. The novice with a flash of insight might shake our assumptions about the path, but the veteran with hard-won wisdom often grounds us.
So the deeper tension we're feeling might not be between effort and outcome at all, but between story and shortcut, the earned and the arrived at, between who we feel should get ahead based on our values and who actually does get heard. It's a powerful reframe.
It truly is. And this brings us to the practical side, navigating the very phrase work smarter versus work harder. The phrase itself is a modern mantra, appealing to efficiency and ingenuity. But as your source points out, it oversimplifies something deeply contextual.
Okay, let's shift from the why behind the tension to the when. Based on your source material, when is working smarter clearly the better path, and when is working harder the necessary, even virtuous path?
Your material gives us some great concrete examples. Let's look at when working smarter clearly wins.
Like using automation for repetitive tasks. The factory worker who designs a simple jig to cut their manual labor in half, or software developers writing scripts to eliminate hours of manual data entry.
Smarter wins here because systems thinking, leverage, and optimization replace brute force and repetition. You're creating a system that works for you.
Or strategic delegation and leadership. A manager who builds a high-trust autonomous team instead of trying to micromanage every single detail.
Yeah, they trade direct control for empowerment and scalability. The leaders shift their effort from doing the work to designing the system and empowering others to execute.
Strategic studying, right? Focusing on the 20% of material likely to yield 80% of the results on a test or project.
Prioritization. Understanding the structure of the problem or the system you're working within beats just grinding hours with diffuse effort. It's about metacognition, thinking about how you learn and achieve results.
And entrepreneurship and leverage hiring staff, building scalable business models, using AI or technology to multiply your output.
In these cases, the goal isn't to hustle forever as an individual. It's to create machines, whether literal technology or organizational systems, that hustle for you, generating disproportionate results from your direct input.
But then your source makes a crucial point. There are absolutely times when working harder is not just necessary, but the only way, or even morally or developmentally superior.
Absolutely. Physical mastery and conditioning, for example.
Yeah.
A dancer, an elite athlete, a martial artist, they simply must put in the hours. The muscle memory, the endurance, the physical adaptation requires repetitive effort over time.
You cannot shortcut biological adaptation. The work itself is the wisdom being built, not just in the mind, but in the body itself.
Or healing from trauma. A person in therapy confronting difficult memories and triggers requires deep, often painful emotional labor. The smarter, faster path of avoidance or denial might be tempting, but the harder, more confronting path of processing and integration is often the only true path to healing.
Building character through repetition and disciplined practice, a monk sweeping floors, a soldier in basic training, a musician practicing scales for hours daily.
Here, the value isn't just the outcome, a clean floor, readiness for battle, technical proficiency. The grind transforms the person. It's about cultivating humility, patience, discipline, resilience, personal development gained through the difficult process itself.
And sometimes, especially early on, it's just doing the necessary dirty work that no one else will. A founder manually reaching out to thousands of potential users when they're just starting.
Exactly. Early stage, hands-on effort often earns long-term credibility and provides invaluable direct feedback. In these cases, the smarter, scalable way might not even exist yet. Only sweat equity gets you there.
So, based on the distinctions you laid out from your source material, which approach is better?
Well, it depends entirely on the goal. Your source notes that if your primary goal is maximizing output per unit of time, efficiency, scaling systems, or entrepreneurial leverage, smarter often wins because it focuses on optimizing processes and using leverage. But if your goal is deep personal change, physical mastery, building character, healing, gaining a specific kind of hard-won credibility, or engaging in practices where the process is the point, then harder is often the necessary path because it focuses on transformation through endurance and direct experience.
This really highlights that the choice isn't purely objective. How you lean often depends on your perspective, perhaps even your professional identity or worldview.
Exactly. Your source suggests the engineer might instinctively default to smarter, looking for ways to optimize, automate, refine. The craftsman might lean towards harder, valuing mastery through repetition, the knowledge built into the hands of the body through years of practice. An idealist might constantly be searching for the right balance. Your approach is shaped by who you are and how you see the world and value work.
Which brings us squarely into the modern age, especially with tools like AI and pervasive internet access. How does this work smarter concept apply now? When are these powerful technologies wise tools for leverage, and when do they become crutches that dull growth or, perhaps worse, erode ethics?
This is the critical question today, isn't it? Your source breaks this down brilliantly into the distinction between using tools for leverage and letting them become crutches that replace fundamental effort or integrity.
Let's look at tools for leverage and learning. That's the smart use.
Yes. Using AI to summarize complex papers or articles, for instance. It helps you grasp the main ideas much faster if you then engage critically with the summary and the source material. Or using internet research to quickly get a lay of the land when starting a new project, it speeds up idea generation and gives you access to vast knowledge quickly.
Using AI for rough drafts or outlines when writing. It helps overcome the inertia of a blank page, boosts momentum, and gives you a structure. But you still have to refine, own, and deepen the actual writing.
And online courses or tutorials. They democratize access to education and empower self-directed learning in ways unimaginable before. These are examples where the tool extends your reach or speeds up mechanical steps, allowing your effort to be directed more strategically.
But then there are the crutches, the lazy or harmful uses that actually prevent growth.
Like copy-pasting AI-generated answers without actually understanding the content. There's no internalization, no critical engagement, just shallow mimicry. Or constantly Googling every question the second it pops into your head without spending any time thinking through the problem yourself first.
That fundamentally undermines your own problem-solving abilities, memory retention, and capacity for independent thought.
Using AI to deliberately fake expertise, fabricating skills on a resume, writing essays or reports, and claiming them as entirely your own work. That erodes credibility, yours and potentially others, and ventures into serious ethical gray zones. Or relying on productivity apps and systems purely to avoid introspection about why you're procrastinating or struggling.
The tech becomes a sophisticated mask for emotional avoidance, lack of discipline, or poor boundaries, as your source implies.
To use these powerful tools wisely and ethically, your source suggests cultivating specific mindful practices.
Critical thinking. Training yourself not just to ask what's the answer, but how do I know this is true? What are the sources? What are the limitations?
Reflection. Genuinely pausing to ask yourself, am I using this tool to genuinely grow, learn, or be more effective, or am I using it to avoid something difficult or necessary?
Intentionality. Clarifying your why before you even engage with the tool. What is the specific purpose you hope this technology will help you achieve right now?
Skill stacking. Using tools not as a replacement for your own abilities, but as a way to enhance them. Pairing AI assistance with your unique storytelling voice, using internet research to fuel original analysis, not just summarize existing points.
And perhaps most interestingly, mindful friction. Occasionally choosing the hard way on purpose, deliberately doing something manually sometimes to train your endurance, patience, or gain a deeper, more embodied understanding that a shortcut might bypass.
These aren't just rules. They're habits of mind that ensure technology becomes part of your growth arc, helping you do your essential work more effectively, rather than becoming an escape route from the work itself.
Which naturally leads us to the ethics of using shortcuts or leveraging powerful tools. Are shortcuts inherently bad? Your source argues they aren't. They are simply a different path, often a more efficient one.
What determines the ethics, then, based on your source material?
It depends on what you're shortcutting, why you're shortcutting it, and who it affects. It's ethical when you remove waste, not wisdom. When you use technology or smarter processes to accelerate real, valuable work. When you automate the truly repeatable and mundane. And crucially, when it benefits you and others without deception or harm.
So it becomes unethical when you bypass fundamental learning or integrity for speed, when you fake effort or skill that you don't possess, when you outsource work that is meaningful or requires personal presence, or when it misleads, exploits, or causes harm to others.
And critically, shortcuts become harmful when they're applied to problems that are irreducible, problems that require the full, difficult process. You mentioned examples like trying to shortcut genuine healing from trauma, effective parenting, or building deep character. Some things cannot and perhaps should not be optimized away. They require the hard path because the process itself is the point.
So the right mindset for working smarter, especially today, isn't about doing less work overall or becoming lazy.
No, absolutely not. As your source material puts it so well, think of AI and the internet and all these tools not as ways to avoid effort, but as powerful vehicles to direct your finite effort where it matters most.
Use technology to speed up what's mechanical, clarify what's confusing, spark your thinking when you're stagnant.
But cultivate the willingness to sit with what's hard, to wrestle with what's deep, and to simply show up for what's fundamentally real and requires your presence and effort. The ultimate goal of working smarter should be about enabling you to do more of the right work, not simply doing less work overall.
That brings us to what might be the most important question of all. What is the right work? How do you define it for yourself? Your source offers 4 compelling perspectives on this.
First, the purpose-driven lens. From this angle, right work is anything that genuinely advances your deeper goals, values, or mission in life. Wrong work, conversely, is anything that primarily serves distractions, boosts ego, provides short-term dopamine hits, but ultimately leaves you feeling empty or off track.
Like, as your source notes, spending hours writing something truly meaningful versus obsessively tracking social media likes for validation. Only one feels right in the long run.
Second, the effectiveness lens. Right work here is defined by its impact work that generates disproportionate results or value for the effort invested, like the Pareto principle suggests. Wrong work keeps you incredibly busy, looks like work, but ultimately changes very little what your source aptly calls productivity theater.
Right, like a startup founder spending all their time perfecting a logo versus actually talking to potential customers to validate the business idea. One is busy work, the other is high-leverage right work for that stage.
Third, the integrity lens. Right work is anything that aligns with your core values and respects others, upholding principles of honesty and fairness. Wrong work breaches trust, manipulates, or causes harm, even if it appears highly efficient or productive on the surface.
Writing an honest, even if modest, resume is right work. Using AI to fabricate impressive-sounding achievements you don't possess is wrong work, even if it helps you get an interview.
Fourth, the developmental lens. Right work is anything that helps you genuinely grow your capability, build resilience, expand your wisdom, or develop your character. Wrong work feeds avoidance, perfectionism that prevents action, or simply keeps you stagnant.
Practicing your instrument for hours, even when it's repetitive and boring, is right work if mastery is the goal, because it builds skill and discipline. Spending that same time endlessly researching and tweaking different practice schedules instead is wrong work disguised as strategy.
This concept of right work then raises another important question. Who actually gets to decide what that is? Your source makes it clear this isn't purely objective, it's relational, and depends on your context.
For your own personal growth and development, you ultimately decide what the right work is, aligning it with your purpose, values, and conscience. In employment, your boss or client often defines it based on agreed-upon outcomes and responsibilities. For teamwork or within society, it's often decided collectively based on shared goals, values, laws, or ethical norms. In creative work, it's a dialogue between your inner artistic vision and the needs or reception of your audience.
Crucially, your source emphasizes that you always have agency over whether you accept or reject someone else's definition of right work for you. A company might expect 12-hour days as right work for your role, but if you deeply value family time and boundaries, you might define that expectation as wrong work for your life, leading you to seek a different path.
Your source offers some incredibly practical guiding questions to help you clarify right work for yourself, regardless of external pressures. Ask yourself, does this work align with my deepest values or purpose? Will this genuinely matter in a month or a year from now, or is it just noise? Is this building something of real substance, or just maintaining appearances? Would I be truly proud of this work if no one else ever saw it? Is this helping me become the kind of person I want to be?
These questions act as anchors. Right work isn't always the most glamorous, the most efficient, or the work that gets the most external praise. Sometimes it's deep inner work no one sees, humble manual labor, or simply sitting with confusion or difficulty. It's fundamentally anchored in meaning, in genuine contribution, and in personal growth, not just output or external validation.
As we wrap up this deep dive into your material, let's touch on some of the final, deeper insights your source presents that really challenge conventional wisdom about effort in work.
First, the myth of linear effort. The idea that effort automatically equals excellence is often false. Hard work matters immensely, yes, but only when it's coupled with awareness, adaptability, and humility. As your source puts it vividly, otherwise it's just ego in overalls. Lots of visible effort without real growth or impact.
That phrase, ego and overalls, really sticks with you. Second, the idea of expertise as identity. Those 10,000 hours don't just build a skill, they build a self. The struggle, the endurance becomes woven into who you are, forming a moral framework and a part of your story. Shortcuts threaten this fundamental worldview for those who've taken the long path. It raises the uncomfortable question, if they can be right or succeed without suffering, what does that make me?
Sometimes we might find ourselves protecting the narrative that justifies our past investment and struggle, perhaps more than we're protecting the abstract principle of hard work itself.
Third, the moral ambiguity of efficiency. Working smarter, which often means striving for efficiency, isn't inherently virtuous. Efficient isn't always just, fast isn't always right, and optimized isn't always human or compassionate. Smart work can, unfortunately, be a euphemism for cutting ethical corners to get a result faster or cheaper.
True smart work, the kind that's genuinely virtuous, must be guided by ethics, context, and compassion, not solely by the outcome or the speed of achievement.
Fourth, the paradox of mastery. Your source notes that true experts often circle back to the fundamental, almost beginner-level insights, but they do so with a much deeper humility and understanding. The 10,000 hours don't just find answers. They earn the perspective and humility required to truly grasp the profound simplicity of fundamental truths. Wisdom might be accessible to anyone in principle, but it lands deeper and resonates more truly in those who have suffered, strived, and put in the work to earn that perspective.
And finally, perhaps the deepest insight: soul work versus skill work. Not all right work is visible, measurable, or easily showcaseable. Skill work like writing code, designing a product, closing a deal is often what gets external recognition and can often be enhanced or even replicated by AI and tools. Soul work like cultivating patience, practicing forgiveness, grieving a loss, building inner resilience, showing up with compassion is lived through. It's often messy, inefficient, and happens unseen.
AI can replicate certain skills with increasing sophistication, but it cannot replicate meaning or undertake soul work. The internet provides information and speeds up tasks, but it doesn't automatically grant wisdom or build character. We need to reclaim the value of that unseen, often inefficient friction in life and work that truly shapes who we are at our core. The most important work, the right work in its deepest sense, is often the work that makes us whole.
This deep dive into your source material is more than just an intellectual exercise. It's about confronting some fundamental questions about meaning, validation, and identity in your own life and work. What justifies your effort? What truly validates your insights and contributions? What does it mean for you to feel that you deserve success or recognition?
We've unpacked why we feel that tension around shortcuts through the lenses of ethos, pathos, and logos. We have explored when to lean into working smarter versus harder based on your specific goals, looked critically at how modern tools like AI can be either powerful levers or debilitating crutches. And most importantly, we've explored what right work might mean through different crucial perspectives.
As a final thought drawn directly from the rich material you shared, working hard matters. Working smart matters. But ultimately, working true to your values, true to your vision, true to your growth, and your deepest self matters most.
Take that with you. As you approach your work and your life this week, ask yourself, what does it truly mean for you to work true?